Well, hello and welcome into another edition of Entertainment News here at MBE. We'd just like to thank you once again for joining us here on our YouTube channel. I'm one of your co-hosts, Stephen John McLaughlin. Our co-host, John Christopher Walsh, is here. And we're here. If you clicked on that thumbnail, you'll know what we're going to be talking about tonight. It's, of course, Paul McCartney's new film, Man on the Run, which is in cinemas as we speak. John and I have not seen the film yet, so the angle we will be coming from is obviously everything that's been mentioned across the internet over the last few days since this film was released. But we will be reviewing this documentary on Saturday once it is on Prime Video this Friday. So, John, we've been talking about this on our news show for the best part of maybe a year now. It's certainly something that we are really looking forward to, not from a musical sense, but from a personal life perspective, I would have to say.
From a Paul McCartney perspective, Stephen, I said it when we spoke about it previously, Steve, and I find it really interesting because whilst I've read his autobiography and I know a thing or two about the guy, I don't really ever think I've got a real sense of what makes Paul McCartney tick. Like you would perhaps with George Harrison and certainly with John Lennon. John wore his heart on his sleeve and you knew exactly what he was going through. For good and for bad, a bit of a fantasist at times, kind of changed with the wind, his opinions on things. But you knew all about the guy. You knew his tragedy and his early life, and you knew what happened post-Beatles, because he was always out there on Dick Cavett and all these chat shows over in the States, letting everybody know exactly what was going on. And then obviously the gap years, even then you've got home videos and photographs. Mac has always been a more secretive, borderline politician kind of figure, and that he kept his cards close to his chest. He was the showman. He was one of the co-conspirators. What would you call it? Not conspirators, but kind of like a co-conspirator on the formation of the Beatles. He wasn't the man per se. That was John, of course. Just a little nod to all the haters out there. But obviously a huge part in what made the Beatles the force they were, as one of the leading pair in Lennon and McCartney. But he kept his life, his personal life, away from that, Stephen. So that was the thing I was getting into this, looking really forward to exploring, and hopefully via Rotten Tomatoes and a couple of articles, we'll get maybe a semblance of whether they've went down that route. Getting to see more about the man behind the showman, behind the performer, behind the musician, behind the greatest melodist to ever walk the earth. I want to see what made him tick on a human level. I want to see the warts. I want to see everything. And I want to see it completely discombobulating and fucking breaking down the very fabric of these sycophants that frequent certain groups his whole lives. Because they have got it in their head that Paul was this, he was that, he didn't swear, he didn't do this. That was John. That roofing, that was him. He did all those naughty things. Paul would never do that. Not my Paul. I want to see a darker side to Paul. I don't want to fucking earn all his skeletons. I want to see what made him tick, Stephen.
You want to see the three-dimensional version of Paul McCartney, John, because up to this point, I mean, Paul McCartney as an artist has been part of our lives, all our lives. He's been in and around showbiz for the best part of over 60 years now. John and yourself and me, we've obviously grew up in his music in one form or another, whether it be the Beatles solo stuff or Wings, the Fireman as well from the late 90s, early 2000s, and it's one of those things, I've read many books on Paul McCartney and his private life, and you take it with a pinch of salt because you're not really sure if it's third-hand information or sensationalism or whatever it may be. So I'm very interested to see what this documentary presents in terms of personal conflicts, particularly in those early years just after the Beatles, in terms of his struggles. I know obviously he's spoke briefly on chat shows about obviously having this drink issue that Linda had to pull him out of, initially when the Beatles split, and apparently, I don't know, maybe someone in the comment section can help us out here, but I think the actual span of the period they're covering is from 1970 right up to John's death So
Yeah, 80.
There's going to be a lot of stuff happening there. But going back to what you were talking about, his guarded life. I think we've got to remember the circumstances involved in terms of his children. He would have wanted to have protected them, because I think all his children were born in the 70s, apart from Beatrice, who was obviously from another marriage. But his kids to Linda were all born in the 1970s, and you can respect someone for what to maybe keep the kids out of the limelight to an extent, But I'm interested to see that, John. We're talking about obviously Linda joining Paul on stage and stuff like that as well, which I know we'll get into in a short while. But it's all those little things I want to see. I want to see the man more than the musician.
Oh, absolutely, Stephen. Because we know the musician, we know what he's all about. We know the guy is one of the greatest singer-songwriters, one of the greatest vocal ranges. We know he's, as I said, I think the greatest melodic brain to ever walk on earth. I spoke to you, Stephen, before we went live. Great channel, kind of does content related to the Beatles, and you had to guess a lot of the songs based on chord progressions, and I immediately picked out Long Winding Road. That's a Macca one, right away. You can just know the way the guy operates as a musician. We know all of that side of him. So I'm looking forward to seeing post-Beatles, Paul, because we know he was in a dark place in the early stages, certainly when he was hanging around the farm, with obviously Martha and this strange fucking Dalmatian dog that appears on the thumbnail. Don't know who that, I was about to say that cat is. Don't know who that dog is. The reason I was going to say that cat is because that was a kind of thing back in those days. I always think of George Harrison. I think it may be Nothing Shaking. Something about a cat. The cats are stomping on the heels and toes. I'm begging all my kisses on bending knees. It's a term. They said, that cat. Who's this fucking cat? Who's this piece of shit? So I'm really looking forward to seeing it, Stephen. What you hinted at there, obviously talking about Macca and how it affected him. And also we're going to explore that Man in the Run. I watched a really interesting video, Stephen, a couple of nights back with regards to him scoring that sort of strange film he did in the mid-60s, in between them quitting as a touring band and prior to recording Sgt. Pepper's.
Yeah.
Also, John went away and did How I Won the War. George went to India. Ringo stayed wherever the fuck Ringo was, doing whatever Ringo was doing. But also, Paul done the score, and I didn't realise it upset John so much. Apparently, that caused quite the rift, and that was almost the seeds being sown for the downfall of the Beatles. And I know people like to look at Yoko Ono and say it was her that brought the Beatles down. She was the reason for the split. Maybe as a sort of superficial character coming in, and people can say, yeah, she's the reason. She's sitting on the amp. She's eating George's digestive biscuits. Maybe I can understand it, but by all accounts, it was this sort of scoring that really upset John. I think he gave him the rights, Paul, which I think tells you everything you need to know about Paul. He kind of shared the writing credits to try and appease him. So I want to see that side to Paul. I want to see what makes a guy tick. And Stephen, we'll get into some of these sort of reviews as well. I'm sure we'll get a few. This guy's just casually putting out Scottish racism in the review section of Rotten Tomatoes. Philip de Semelin. Look at your name, mate. Philip de Semelina, you fucking bellend. Honestly, even if the merest waft of bagpipe on Mull of Kintyre brings you out in hives, Man on the Run is still full of treasures. What does that even mean, mate? I'm not a huge fan of bagpipes. I'm Scottish. No. But Mull of Kintyre is one of the man's greatest solo outputs. It got to #1 in the midst of the punk era. And it remains an anthem for a lot of people. Yeah. I was just watching boxing the other night. Stadium full of people singing Mull of Kintyre. Not the target demographic, I'm pretty fucking sure. So I don't really understand that comment. But enjoyed it, Stephen. And this is what I like to see. Audience reviews, critical voices, they're rating this very highly, Stephen. And look, we've had a lot of documentaries, man, focusing on musical figures. Hell, we've had a lot of Beatles ones over the years. Martin Scorsese done one. I was about to say Peter Jackson. Did he do one?
Oh, he did Get Back.
Get Back. I was thinking of another one. It was Ron Howard.
Yeah.
has done one. Obviously, Scorsese's done the Stones. He's done Bob Dylan. We've had a wide variety of really interesting documentaries over the years, and they tend to lend themselves really well to musical figures because these people, by their very nature, are interesting characters, and certainly with John and Paul come from really tragic circumstances, and obviously that shapes their lives well into their adult years. So it'll be intriguing to see how they go down this route. Steve, we have got a couple of articles here, though. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah.
I don't know. You want me to read some of this fucking stuff? I don't know what spoilers per se. I've not seen it yet. I'm really looking forward to it coming out. But yeah, I mean, I watched a couple. Briefly watched a question and answer thing at the premiere as well, and Mackie was looking resplendent. You said there was something about Sean Lennon was alluding to the 1980 thing after Lennon was assassinated, about it's a drag. So there's been a couple of interesting things coming out. But yeah, I mean, as you can see here, Stephen, it went through the early solo arc of McCartney's career from early material that failed to gain traction. I disagree with that. Again, I think McCartney's one of a number of really good albums that the man's put out over the course of his solo career. Ram, I think it's a sleeper album.
John, initially that album did get slated. In fact, I think Ringo slated it, and I think John naturally would slate it and just being John. I can't remember what George said, probably Fruity Numbers or something, whatever.
Ringo slated a Paul McCartney album.
I just think it's an album that's aged well, I think, more than anything, you know. And
if I was Paul, I'd have said to Ringo, why don't you go out and do better then? Man. Show me how it's done.
I think it was just in the midst of the fallout, though, to be fair. You know, there was obviously a lot of bad blood, you know, at that point. But no, I think the album's fine. I think it's an enjoyable album. Some great tracks on there that I think would fit right into that Let It Be period, Abbey Road. I think it's a fine album. But I think McCartney was a good album as well, the first one. But I mean, you know, it's, you know, in terms of his solo output, I think he's had more good songs out there than bad ones. But there is ones that I just can't take to. They're too sugary for me. But over that time period of 1970 to 1980, there's some fine albums, and they're obviously Band in the Run probably being the sort of standout one. But no, I think. You know, I enjoy his music, you know, but I know everything there is to do with his music. That's the thing about this documentary. I really want to see. I want to see archival footage, you know, from Scotland. I want to see.
Yeah, we've said that there.
A lot of interaction between him and Linda and the kids, if there is. I mean, we've seen some footage, obviously, and we're playing his acoustic guitar on the farm and stuff like that, with the kids running about and stuff, but. It's just I just want to know the man from that angle rather than, you know, the artist that we know and love. And
it's interesting, Stephen, because they're exploring that soul part of obviously his career, and like they said, the formation of Wings and where he was mentally as a guy at that point, coming out of the greatest band that ever lived, and then having to try and step into that familiar surroundings with new figures, and obviously the 40-ton gorilla on the back that is. How do you form a band as Paul McCartney and try and not get destroyed by the expectations of being compared to the Beatles constantly? So, I mean, again, it's really interesting. Stephen, I mean, I talk about, obviously, John Lennon. We know a lot more about John's life and maybe George to an extent. But see, to be fair, you could probably do a similar thing with John Lennon, and in terms of post-Beatles, I don't know if they've ever done a documentary. I know, obviously, he done Imagine, which is kind of a making of the album. Yeah, Give Me Some Truth, done that sort of making of the Imagine album. And that was kind of a documentary in itself. But, I mean, it didn't explore the guy's entire... I mean, obviously, we can't really explore it because he get fucking tragically gunned down in 1980, but there's probably scope to explore all four Beatles, to be fair.
There is the 1988 Imagine documentary, John.
Oh, is it? Yeah, I've never seen that.
Yeah, it's the one with the covers his self-portrait, the scribble. You know,
Is that the one I'm thinking about, or am I thinking about Give Me Some Truth? Is that the one with the tramp?
well, there's a lot of Give Me Some Truth in, I imagine, but it does that time span from 1970 to 1980, obviously. But
Oh, yeah.
it
Maybe
needs
watch it.
updated. It's a very dated documentary now, but and it's the other thing about it is it doesn't talk about the Lost Weekend. It doesn't talk about Maypang, so you can see the angle they
Yeah.
were going with. Yoko had a lot to do with decisions on that documentary. I don't want to see that. This is how I hope Man in the Run's not like that. You know.
Yeah.
You want to see
Steve. Oh, you have to. And to be fair, Steve, that'll probably lead into this, where Stella's obviously talking about the abuse of Linda McCartney. After the formation of Wings, also, she was a prominent figure on stage. I don't know if she was a musician in her own right. Certainly, she had a not bad voice, to be fair.
Yeah.
But she was kind of hanging about on the keys and whatnot at various points in live performances. I've seen that. Also, she did get abuse, as all female figures who had the audacity to get on stage with incredibly famous men back in those days did get. We've seen it with Yoko, we've seen it with various other people. This was an era when the likes of Bernard Manning and Roy Chubby Brown were hugely successful comedic figures in the United Kingdom in particular. It was a different environment, and a lot of hatred and a lot of vitriol and sexism and racism was allowed to fly. So it was a different time. If you were to go and take that situation and transplant it into 2026 now, people would be getting absolutely fucking destroyed for these views and also the criticisms. This was a guy's wife. Loved her deeply, she loved him deeply.
I think when we had that last conversation about Ram, I think it was just the end of last year we were talking about Ram, and I think you had studied it to the point where you were actually breaking down Linda's singing, and you said she's not a bad singer at all. I think Michael Jackson actually complimented her singing as well. So I don't think she was the greatest singer, but she was certainly not the worst singer. I think
she was better than Yoko.
I think Paul probably deliberately wrote songs that would match her vocal range as well. So I thought it worked well. I thought she had a sound, definitely had a sound on Ram. I think it was the only album the two of them did, wasn't it? Together, alone. And her presence is all over that album. I think it's a fine album. I really do.
It's hard, Stephen, to try and step into a band environment when you've got Paul with his fucking 6-octave range, vocal range. He can do women's voice. He can do incredibly deep, is it tenor, baritone voice? So the guy can cover all the spectrums of human sort of vocals. So it doesn't really need Linda. He's just, in a sense, bringing her in because she's important to him. He's going to be touring the world. He wants his wife with him. And I think, Stephen, I don't know if it was the case, but I would love to see what Paul's sort of view. I know certainly after what we kind of see it in the Get Back sessions. He's talking about Yoko and John. How I can't really be in. It's not my position to be critiquing John about Yoko. They love each other. They want to be with each other everywhere. And I think if it's a choice between us and the band and John being with her, he'll be with her. I'd love to see if that's maybe explored at any point in this documentary as well. Maybe Paul comes to realise with his relationship with Linda, kind of where John was. I don't know if it was as intense.
Well, he did say that, John. There was a line, I think it was round about the time McCartney came out. He did say to John, I'm just doing what you and Yoko were doing last year. So he does, that's documented. So he knew where he was at that point. He knew in his own mind, where it was going as well. That was a good bit of the documentary in terms of, I think it might have been Michael Lindsay Hogg that asked that question, wasn't it? Yeah. And Paul candidly said he'll pick Yoko, but not in a way, not in a bitter way or anything like that. It was an acceptance more than anything, a reality.
And Stephen, it was where they were. They'd evolved. They'd outgrown the band environment. They wanted to be their own individual people at that point. They didn't want to make sacrifices and getting songs on albums. And obviously fighting George for space, fighting Paul for space, John's having to fight for space, Ringo. Come on. Octopus's Garden's a good fucking song. To be fair, I'm trying not to be too harsh on Ringo tonight. I love Ringo. I feel like I'm sticking the boot in left, right and centre tonight. I have to stress I do love Ringo. Ringo's a deeply underrated drummer. But Stephen, this is Stella talking about her late mother
Yeah.
via the Daily Mail. Why she's given that fucking rag air room is beyond me, but hey ho. She wasn't a cookie cutter example of someone you put in a band. What they, and she especially, had to go through, like when they isolated her voice and ridiculed her. I mean, it breaks my heart. We can do this with the Beatles, for fuck's sake. We can do this with John at various points. The mistakes happen, man. We can do this with George. When you isolate things, he's playing his guitar, playing the noodles that go nowhere. But then when you piece it all together, it forms that incredible sort of sound that everybody loves and knows. So you can break anything down and ridicule. What I would say, I would turn it on the people that are ridiculing. If I was her back in those days and say, why don't you come on the stage and do a better job? You fucking bitch.
I think Linda would be an easy target, John, because obviously not really knowing the person, but you know, the way she came across in interviews, I think she was at most comfortable at Paul's side rather than you know, sitting on a chat show in the 1980s talking about her own stuff. She had a lot going on, obviously her food range, etc. As well. But no, I think those kind of things can damage someone who's just trying their best, you know, and it's very easy to put people down, you know, if they're at their most vulnerable. And I think not being a musician, not being a singer, you're going to be vulnerable, you're going to be self-conscious, and you're going to have, although it's her husband on stage, you're still going to have that overwhelming presence of a Beatle, you know, on stage, and then being judged by the music critics as well. It would have been very difficult for her to really continue that on. And I know that she continued it on into Wings as well, with obviously Denny Lane at her side as well. And I think it showed the resilience of the woman more than anything, you know, that she wasn't going to be side-saddled or put down in any sense. She was going to continue doing what she'd done. And I think she did learn keyboards. I think she developed...
Oh, I did, yeah. You know, yeah, for sure.
Over the first couple of years, you know, and I think just standing behind the keyboards gave her a bit of protection, I feel like.
Yeah. Stephen, I think that's an interesting comment she makes there, that perhaps that boosted a side that Paul had perhaps lost in terms of her bravery and spirit. Because I've seen Macca talking in interviews about how everyone's self-conscious, we all worry about things. Even as you get older and you're incredibly successful, you've done it all in terms of a musician, you're borderline billionaire, you've still got insecurities and you still are hurt by maybe the odd comment. So I find that interesting, that in the sense that much like people like to criticise Yoko, I don't want to keep bringing John up. This is meant to be a Paul McCartney, this conversation. But I think what a lot of people miss is that John needed that sort of strong female figure in his life. He certainly needed it with his aunt. He needed it with his mother when he was younger. And he wasn't used to having the sort of authoritative male figure because his father walked out on him when he was younger. So Yoko kind of stood in. She was not only his wife, but she also was like his financial advisor and like dealt with the financial side. And she really made him a complete being. I think it's interesting that Stella's kind of hinting at that with Linda as well. In the sense that Macca maybe learnt a couple of things from her and how to deal with criticism and how to just push it aside and say, fuck it, I'm Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
I'll do what I want, bitch. And obviously, continuing on here, she can't do this, she can't sing this. I think this is maybe Paul saying this, He says it in Man on the Run. She can't play piano, she can't do anything. Oh, they're crazy, man. What's he got this old lady in the band for? Who the hell is this? Yeah, it's just jealousy, Steve. We've seen this. Like, we've seen this with the likes of Sydney Sweeney and whatnot in today's age. Really jealous, insecure people who like to lash out. There was a fucking thing I was going deep into a couple of weeks back about a Fox channel, random as fuck, but they actually forced the person to take her own life. So the internet's an incredibly vile place. People, there's a subsection of society that are so deeply unhappy with their own sort of worth and lives in general that they will do anything to shoot down anybody that's got perceived success and make their life miserable. There's just a whole subsection, I don't know how big it is, how small it is, but there's enough people out there who are deeply, deeply unhappy, fucking damaged people. And you've had this throughout decades, millennia, people shooting down other people. So I think the best thing she could have done back in the day, I don't know enough about it, that's why I'm so intrigued by this documentary. I'm going to discover this as I go. Best thing she could have done was just ignore them and say,
Yeah.
well, I'm married to Paul McCartney. I'm in Wings. I'm playing the keyboards. I'm singing. What are you doing? But no, Stephen, look, we've got a couple of articles obviously related, but I'm not going to read them all here. This is more just a sort of overall discussion about
I remember this photograph, John. You used this for a face smash one time.
Yeah, I did, yeah. Stephen, I really like that kind of imagery. I don't know I think Macca was kind of, I think it was Ringo had the actual camera and Get Back, but I think maybe Macca was also into his photography as well because he's got a fucking gallery.
Yeah.
Literally, a gallery and a book.
Yeah.
But I love that kind of stuff where you've got a shallow field focus, whatever. I'm not a photographer. He's front and centre, and then you've got that incredible bokeh effect behind. Really captures him, what he's going through. You can, Stephen, we've spoken about this before. You can see in instances round about this time that he's troubled. You can see it in his fucking floor.
Yeah, he's
sort of
rattled,
brown and whatnot, and you can see that he's troubled. So I'm excited for it, man. I'm really looking forward to seeing the exploration of this guy in a different era. Because whilst I do enjoy Wings and I do enjoy his solo output, also he's a fucking incredible figure. It'll stand the test of time. Ultimately, like you said, without continually hitting the same nail on the head again and again, I'm just wanting to see the human side of Paul. This may make him... I'm not one of these fucking tribal fools out there that has to pick a side. Obviously, John's my favourite, I'm not going to lie, but I still love Paul McCartney, I love George, I love Ringo, I love them all equally.
Yeah.
I want to see the human side, and it may even warm him, if he needs warming, to perhaps some of the less admire, what would be the word? People who are less infused by him. They still love him, but maybe less infused than they are from maybe other members. It opens up doors.
But I think that's probably the purpose of this film, is to connect better, you know, and I think he's had a lot of time to reflect on how to present this documentary as well. And there must have been a conversation at some point about this as well. How long it was going on, I don't know. It could have been something that was in his mind for the best part of 30 years or not. But I think he's at a period in his life now where it's time to tell the true story. And we only know snippets of it through media and stuff like that. But Paul McCartney is always conscious of the camera. And that's been the issue for the best part of his fame, I suppose.
Stephen, do you think... Sorry for interrupting, but do you think that maybe he's aware that there's maybe subsections of Beatles fans and maybe just people in general who have got this opinion on him, and he maybe wants to set the record straight?
Perhaps.
Via this?
Yeah, I mean, this is the best medium to do it in, you know, especially if you've got all that footage, you know, personal footage and archival footage and, you know, stuff that perhaps maybe in interviews and audio and stuff like that. You know, there is a rich volume of content there for Paul McCartney to tell this story. I really do want to see, I think the kids will be involved as well. I say kids, they're mostly my age or older, but his children, I want to hear from him. I want to hear from James. I don't know how far they're going to go into, if it's going to 1980, are they going to touch on Linda's death? I'm not really sure. Well,
I was going to bring that up, Stephen. That's something I would be disappointed about. I mean, I also don't want to be morbid about it because ultimately it's a personal thing.
It was a big moment in his life, you know, and she was
I remember reading the autobiography, and I think he was actually, I don't know if he was over in America, whether it was prior, but I think it was after he had this little rural thing in the desert. I can't remember what desert it was or whereabouts, but it certainly was in the United States.
Was it Arizona?
It may have been Arizona.
I think it was Tucson.
I think it may have been. I had something beginning with T in my head, but I didn't want to commit. But he kind of delved into it in the book where he was. He was in a dark place, man. And again, that would be my one regret. I understand maybe he's wanting to start it in a kind of low ebb. Post-Beatles, he's in this dark place. Linda helps him get himself back together, obviously spends time in Scotland. Then he gets back on the horse and reforms Wings, and then it kind of ends triumphantly getting into 1980. Obviously, it doesn't end in terms of fucking he's former bandmate and brother in arms, if you'd like, gets fucking brutally assassinated. But in terms of on a personal level, his growth throughout that decade, we'll want to maybe explore that and end on a happier note. And if you go and end in the 90s with the death of Linda, then also that's ending in a sombre note. And then you'd want to continue again into the current day. So where do you draw the line? That's always the key with these documentaries.
Yeah, well, this is the thing, and the relationship with George as well was a big part of that as well. I don't know how far they'll go into it, whether or not they will. I don't know if perhaps maybe Olivia would permit that sort of story in terms of George's side of things. I'm not really sure, but I think that's the interesting part as well. I know that obviously they had their troubles in the early 70s, and they got back together around about John's death, attending things, and then I think things fell apart again, and then by the mid-90s, a lot of the sort of business stuff had been resolved, and there obviously we saw it in that episode 9 of the Beatles anthology. George saying that, it's just a shame John missed this, we've had this second chance to get to know each other again, and John missed that. But those kind of things, I think, are not important. I mean, it is about Paul McCartney's life anyway, but these are big moments in his life, relationships in his life as well at that period. I don't know if they'll get into that or not.
I'm not sure if they will. I don't know. I mean, he's talking about it here, Stephen. He has been interviewed a lot, and obviously he's maybe wanting to give a voice to the untapped moments in his life. So I think it'll be more personal, and that's kind of what I want anyway. I mean, we know about the other Beatles. We kind of know how they went in terms of being in touch, not being in touch, hating each other, punching each other, getting back together. What we don't really know is about Paul, the man himself, in that period where he was on a human level with his family and whatnot, and then try to get in back on the hospital wings. So I'd be happy if they just explore that. I'm really looking forward to it though, Stephen, man. I don't know how they're structuring the actual documentary, whether it's going to be just a single airing or whether it will be maybe split up. I think it'll be a single airing. I think myself it's 2.5 hours or something.
Yeah, so, something like that, yeah.
So I mean, it's a good length.
Yeah.
And obviously just getting to see archival footage, new stuff that we've not seen. It's always something I'm fascinated by. I discovered an incredible image of Paul and the Beatles in general, but certainly Paul turning round to face the camera in I think 1965, I think it was 5, over in America, and it's an incredible photo of him smiling, black and white photo on stage, crowd are behind him, and he's smiling with his Hofner bass. And I'd never seen it before in my fucking life. I went down a rabbit hole with the photographer. He had a whole host of incredible images of John with a striped blazer, maybe smoking a cigarette or something. And then there was ones of the Stones. This guy had a whole gallery of rare images of people behind the scenes on the stage. So just discovering new visual stuff with these guys is always fascinating for me.
I think Paul was very photogenic as well, John. He had a presence about him. We talk about his style in the 60s, second to none. One of the most stylish guys to come out of that decade. Maybe not so much in the 70s with the mullet and the tank tops.
I like the mullet era. But
certainly, he was such a stylish guy, back in the day. And you can see why the girls loved him, because it's such a, it just that iconic haircut, the mop top, and just that cheeky smile, and obviously those chiseled eyebrows. But no, I mean, it's something.
He was ass, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're all natural.
But that's the side I want to see. There was little bits during that anthology, the Threetle stuff that I really enjoyed between him and George and Ringo, and he's still playing to the cameras. That's the thing, though, isn't it? And it's like he's conscious of the camera in the room, and he has to perform. He has to, and I think there's a few moments that irritated you with just his clowning around, wasn't it?
I'm trying to remember. Oh God, yeah. So he's a combo at times. There's no doubt about it. Even in the 60s, he was a complete combo. He never had that sort of pure rock and roll aura that John Lennon had. John was just different gravy. in terms of a front man, and it just even we talk about it all the time. The She's a Woman performance, I think it's NME. I can't remember where it is. Maybe in fucking Blackpool or something. I can't remember. He's got the stadium jacket on, the hair swept to the side. He's chewing on gum, and he's just fucking rattling the chords out. And it's like this guy's just got it. He's got it, and then he's got the glasses on, the sort of blue reflective stuff. He was just a very, very cool guy. I'm not saying Paul wasn't cool, but Paul. He had nervous energy on the stage.
Yeah.
It was different to John. John looked like he belonged there. He was taking the piss and talking over the screaming, and all of this nonsense. Paul was different. He was a bit of a combo at times. This is this image, by the way, here. Fucking love that image.
That's a great photo of that, yeah.
Incredible. I actually thought it was AI when I sent it to you. I'm like, I have to go and study this now and make sure I've not made a fool of myself. Speaking of AI, I think it may have been the premiere, that Ringo, Sean, who else was there? James, Danny, Julian. Was that AI?
I would say so.
Is that AI?
There's been a lot of photographs.
I don't know the premiere, but it was like them sitting. Looking.
I'm not sure, John. I would probably put my money on it being AI. But I think it's Julian that always says, you know,
I'm going to search it up.
One of his continual moans, but you know, he's not part of the inner circle.
Oh fuck him over here.
So I don't know. It might be AI. I don't know. I'd have to see it.
I don't know. I'd have to look it up again, man. I seen an image. I'm like, don't know if that's real.
John, I just want to touch on just before we move on to anything else, is in terms of obviously Sean Lennon's input into this documentary. And I don't know how much he's going to feature in this. Obviously, Sean was only 5 in 1980, but you know, they do touch on that infamous footage of Paul being interviewed right after John's death, and ridiculous questions that were thrown his way as well. Clearly, you can see the man is in shock, deep shock, and it looked like he'd been crying as well. Just looking at his eyes, it looked like he'd been deeply upset naturally about the news of John's killing. Sean does talk about, obviously, the comment about it's a drag, you know, and puts some perspective on it and puts a human side of how people deal with death, and everyone reacts differently. But that particular interview was only hours after John died, you know, so it's not even a sense of being in a mournful state. It's still in a shock state. John, there was an interesting photograph, and I think perhaps we might see this in the documentary, was the one Linda took of Paul outside on the morning of John's death. We looked at it maybe a couple of months ago, and
I can search it up. I'll try and
just absolutely drained, and that's all the world had to see was that particular photograph. Paul didn't have to say anything. Paul, being Paul, obviously being obliging to journalists, etc. But some of the questions that they were asking were ridiculous for that point in time. But the photograph was a black and white photograph of him outside on, I think it's
that one there.
Of
not going to get a good image of this.
That's the one, yeah.
I'll bring it up and see if I can get it loading better quality, because Facebook deliberately screws your image quality when you try to directly open it up. Yeah,
that's enough.
You could tell he was in shock, for fuck's sake. He literally said he went to the studio to listen to stuff to just try and keep his mind off what had happened. I mean, you'd need to be I don't want to be offensive here, but you need to be brain dead to not realise where the guy was in terms of his mental state. But I knew everyone knew they had issues in terms of falling out, but by all accounts they were on better sort of terms at the end. And obviously, still an incredibly important figure in his life. It's been brutally assassinated, so you need to be completely fit.
He said himself, you know, everyone, you know, in show business that were sort of asked about the incident all had these great speeches prepared. Paul's just came out of studio. I think he was with George Martin that day, and not prepared at all, just wants to get into the car. Journalists are ready to ask him the questions, and I think the best thing he could have done was probably just remain silent, get in the car, and put this photograph out with perhaps maybe a quote later on through his publisher. But he spoke about it at great lengths, in the sort of months after it, because there was a big backlash about it at the time. And he said himself, in black and white, you read that in a paper, it's a drag. It looks so flippant. It looks cold, But
Yeah.
if you watch the footage, you've got a good theory about it, John.
Yeah, I always think, it's the what was it? Misery.
Misery.
It's going to be a drag. Misery. I always think it. He's literally said he went back and listened to music in the studio all day. So I can imagine him getting back and reminiscing to the early stuff with the Beatles, when he was obviously much closer with John in the Halcyon days or whatever the fuck you call it, and maybe listening to Misery. And obviously the tone of that song is misery. So that's probably where he was in terms of his mindset. Yeah. And I literally saying it's going to be a drag. I've lost her now for sure. She won't be here. I can't remember the words. Won't be mine. I'm fucking butchering the words. It's going to be a drag misery. That's my theory. He was maybe listening and that's stuck in his head on some level. Don't think he was being insensitive. That's, Stephen, again, a great opportunity for them to explore that in this documentary.
Yeah.
Maybe where he was. I don't know how deep we'll go into it, because like I says, I think they probably want to finish in a happy note.
When George passed away in 2001, Paul stood outside his estate and was ready for the journalist this time. So this is something that's been on his mind for the best part of 21 years at that point. That
Stephen,
I didn't handle that well, in terms of my PR machine in my head. I did not handle that situation well. That will never happen
people,
again.
Stephen, that know of Paul and get an idea of what his background is and whatnot, they'll know that he doesn't handle grief well. Because they kind of go into it in that biography with the loss of his mother. He didn't even want to go to a funeral, I don't think. I think he may have been over in Europe or something.
Well, everyone reacts differently. I think I read somewhere that I can't remember who it was that died, but John's reaction to it, I don't know if it's Stuart Sutcliffe, I'm not really sure. Perhaps not, but it was someone passed away and John laughed hysterically.
Yeah.
But I mean, that happens to people. It doesn't make them a bad person, or they don't
Roy Orbison passing.
The death of that person. George
Harrison phoned up.
Phoned Tom Petty, and said, I bet you're glad it's not you. I mean, everybody just deals with it differently. Paul's no exception to that. I think one of the things he said to his dad after his mum had died, what we're going to do for money now? There's no you can't hold those kind of moments against people, because everyone's brain processes death and grief differently. And Paul McCartney is not different to that. And you've got to remember that, I think Paul said this in the anthology, Paul was probably in the top 3 people that knew John best. People who are fans were affected by that moment. Imagine how Paul McCartney must have felt when they get that news through.
Yeah.
Horrific. Absolutely horrific. And I'm glad Sean's come out and spoke about it. He didn't have to. He was only a boy at the time. He wouldn't have not remembered that interview. But it's good to put these things to bed from the sort of Lennon estate, that perspective.
That would make me think that maybe exploring it.
Years ago.
If Sean's coming out and doing an interview, that makes me think they maybe do explore it.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that. I think, Steve, we've spoke before about Paul and also the passing of John. I think he did hold a bit of a grudge on some level, the way that the perception changed regarding John and how people kind of belittled the other Beatles. Yeah, they were just side notes. It was all about John. John became this sort of angelic god tier figure, and the rest were kind of relegated. It wasn't his fault, but I think Paul in his mind thought, hold on a minute. It was kind of a joint venture here.
Yeah.
Take me out the picture, and I don't think the Beatles exist either. So maybe you just fucking rein that back a bit. But that's what happens, Stephen, when people get gunned down or lose their lives in their prime. It happens with everybody. You've seen it with numerous figures over the years, Tupac being one, obviously, that springs to mind. They take on this sort of different form in the years that follow, because people they kind of yearn for what they've not got. I'm going to move on to this, Stephen, very briefly, because this is photos from the premiere. That, first of all. Look at these three fucking guys, man.
That's
Does it get any better than that?
They were known as the Smoking Mojo Filters in 1995.
But did they get together and perform?
They did a charity single. I think it might have been for I don't know if it was the Great Ormond Street. It was for a child. I think it was children's charity. I can't remember what it was for. It was an appeal for children. It might have been abroad. I'm not sure if it was a UK based charity, but they did come together, the three of them. It was released as a single.
I need to listen to that. I've never heard that.
Yeah, there was Smoking.
Did you know Paul Weller played the piano?
Yeah.
For Ocean Colour Scene in the mid-90s.
Yeah, he can play the drums as well.
That?
Yeah.
He toured with him and played the piano. Paul fucking Weller. This guy's an absolute superstar. This guy fucking unbelievable. He's playing piano for an up-and-coming band. Then obviously this one, just purely because we know Paul Mescal's playing Paul. And I'm just intrigued to have, first and foremost, a good Boston sports fan. Love it, Paul.
No, you noticed that.
See it. Love to see it, mate. I need to get a new hat, incidentally. One that actually fits me in that colourway. You remember the last one?
Yeah.
Fucking resting on your ears. But you can kind of see there is a slight resemblance. He has to put the eyebrows. I don't think they're going to do it. But maybe we're being a little bit harsh on Paulie boy. Paul
the height thing's probably bang on, isn't it?
Pretty close, yeah. Yeah, pretty close, yeah. Shows you that Mac is still retaining his sight. Off to see it.
Yeah.
Ringo can try and call him out now. I'm kind of really harsh on Ringo tonight.
Yeah.
Audience review, Stephen. These lucky bastards have seen it in a theatre. They're rating it really highly. Yeah. I'm intrigued. I don't want it spoiled though, but I kind of want to get a semblance of what is happening in terms of the story. Yeah, there you go. A lot of nostalgia from the 70s with Linda and the Kids when he was trying to establish a new band. So that kind of hints at what you wanted to see, Stephen. Maybe.
Yeah, this is the stuff I want to see, John. I want to see Linda. I want to see the kids. I want to see them all grouped together. I don't know how many tours the kids went on, or whether or not they did. But that's the kind of things you want to see. You want to. It's weird saying this about Paul McCartney. You want to humanise him. He's been at the forefront in the public eye for so long that that sounds ridiculous. But I just want to see this down to earth guy. He said, I think it might have been during this sort of promotion, is he still feels the same way he did before he was famous. Everything else has changed, the perspective, the way that people perceive him. But deep down, he's still the same, 15-year-old boy. So it's things like that. But they're little snippets. It's not enough. This is why I can't wait to see this. If it's 2.5 hours long or whatever it may be, it might not be enough. Absolutely. I might want more. I don't know.
I hear this guy went night one. I'm intrigued. What can we fucking get back and actually get a chance to read the man's thoughts? For fuck's sake. Try to jump on. He rated it 4 out of 5. Still highly enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. A love story between Paul and Linda. I would also say a brotherhood story between Paul and John Lennon. So they're kind of delving into Lennon, and the way the director Morgan Neville constructed the environment and foundation that placed Paul McCartney within the structure of this documentary allowed, maybe almost forced him to accept some realities of his life for all of us to see. That's interesting. They're almost kind of prodding him and getting him to unravel, if you'd like.
Yeah.
Intriguing. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, man. Really, I've been looking forward to it from the day it got announced, which was pretty, well, I say the day it got announced, the day that we discovered it was a thing. I think that was actually pretty recent, to be fair, maybe like mid-late last year. We became aware of this. I've kind of been counting it down, Stephen, from that point. Yeah. And there's another article there that's kind of saying, well, I mean, you have to wait until these Sam Mendes Beatles biopics come out. But until then, you've got this. What do you mean, until then? That's fucking more interesting than the biopics.
That's his
shit about them. I don't give a fuck about them. I want to see actual archive footage with Paul McCartney. So that's something that's incredible. That's fresh. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah.
It comes out on Friday. And Stephen, we're going to be reviewing it, aren't we? We'll watch it.
Might be Friday we do it, John.
It may be. I will batter it. I've got my what do you call it, binge head on anyway. I just binge watched the whole of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms last night. It was 3 hours I think, straight to watching. I've not done that in a long time, not since the golden days of Breaking Bad. If I sat and binged something right all the way through, it was that fucking good though. I may review that as well. So yeah, I'll be definitely sitting and watching it. And we'll batter a review out on it and give our thoughts on Paul McCartney himself, the man, the myth, the legend, and Wings. What's your favourite Wings song, Steve? We'll end there. Have you got a favourite Wings song?
I like Let Me Roll It.
Let Me Roll It is great, isn't it? How good was that live? That was fantastic. I think he played his Les Paul. He had a Les Paul live, and he played it. That was pretty fucking special. Let him in, if I can fucking say it. I was about to say let me in. Let him in's my favourite.
Yeah.
And my favourite performance, I think it was 1976 live. Pretty great performance. Quite the pianist, Paul. Quite the chanter. That's my favourite. Although I like fucking pretty much all of them. Hi. That's a good one.
Yep.
If that's Wings, I think it is. But let us go to round it up. What is your thoughts on Man on the Run? Have you seen it in the theatres? Or are you waiting like us until it drops on Amazon Prime at the end of this week? What's your thoughts on Paul McCartney as a man? Are you looking forward to delving into a more personable story about the guy in a period where it was tumultuous? He was in a low and then he was in a high. Literally high.
High.
What with marijuana in Japan, and it nearly all came crashing down. Share your thoughts on that, on our discussion. Anything at all you want to share, pop it down below in the comment section. Like the video if you've enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon to get notifications. And if you do, you'll see us reviewing this at some point at the end of this week. Until next time though, all that's left to be said. Thank you for watching us. Bye-bye.